Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to a new week and another episode of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
Hi, man.
What a fantastic weekend of people power.
I tell you what, yeah, we normally jump on now and we think, oh, here's an interesting thing I saw over the weekend. And this is, I downloaded this, and this is a new series I'm watching. But I tell you what, protest. The whole weekend. I don't know about you, Chewy, but I probably had every single person I interacted with on the weekend, every single one. First thing that they out of their mouth or mine, protesting the weekend. So, yeah, that's really a huge portion of what we're going to talk about tonight. So we're not going to stuff around too long, but we'll say to start off with, oh, you know what I haven't finished up doing? I really apologize. I'll do this by tomorrow, but we've been doing so much work today. I haven't had time to update the credits at the end for our new patrons. There are a couple of new patrons that I haven't got prepared for tonight to say thanks to, so we'll just do that tomorrow. If you've signed up in the last 7 days, you'll get your thanks tomorrow. And this is probably a bad time to now tell people about being a patron, eh? It's right after I tell them how I forget about new people. Sorry. If you want to support what we do, patreon.com/Big Hero News is the way to do it. Helps us pay a few bills. We'll have a meet-up this Saturday as well, by the way. I think this Saturday we're probably due, which will be technically October. Holy crap, October, November, 3 months till Christmas. So if you're a patron already, we'll do a virtual meetup this weekend. If you're not and you want to come along to the virtual meetup, you'll just need to become a patron this week. Patreon.com/Big Hero News, and lots of things in there which we won't talk about tonight. So let's just rip shit and bust, eh? A lot to talk about tonight. I tell you what, I've watched it 3 times only because it's one of the most enjoyable things I've ever seen. Mehdi Hasan versus Piers Morgan. Holy shit. Like, honestly, we could have just turned on the mics tonight and just done that and nothing else. Just watch that. I've got about 1,000 clips to show you, and I could have 10,000. There was that, like, every single time Mehdi Hasan spoke, we could have gone over it and gone, holy crap, how about this and this and this and this? It was just, if you haven't seen it, we'll show you some stuff tonight. Many of you may have seen clips, because this, I think, was done on Thursday our time, which means all those lefty lunatics in America have already kind of covered this, so we're doing it tonight. Bastards. I see you, Brian Tyler Cohen. I see you. But we're going to look at it tonight. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out the clips tonight, and then you have to go and watch it. Like, honestly, there is so much meat in that hour-long-ish conversation. You can't take it all in on its first viewing. Trust me. I'm going to do that tonight. Also, we are going to have a look at David Seymour and Q&A. We're going to focus most of that time on the Treaty Principles Bill, but also they talked about school lunches, and they talked about truancy rules, and some other bits and bobs that we're going to look at tonight as well. So, big show. It's a big old show. Let's start off by welcoming to the show our local. Are you in Dunedin, the electorate, Chewy? You are, eh, as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Our local MP, Chewy and our local MP, she represents us in the House. It's Rachel Brooking. Rachel, good evening to you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, thanks so much for being involved. Now, look, I am going to start off by putting up a bit of an image here from the ODT. I don't actually think we need to really even play the words that are coming out of it. Let's just have a look at this imagery as we're speaking. Because, of course, on Saturday, starting up about midday down at the dental school, and then at the Octagon, well, it took so long for all the people to get there because there were so many. Down at the Octagon by about 1 o'clock was what we're seeing now on the screen after. And that's actually an early shot because the grass was full by the end of it. And you can see off to the left, people, as we're watching over here, this is George Street. So people are still streaming in from up there. And that's the imagery looking over to where the hospital foundations have all been done. It's a nice little zoom by the ODT. Rachel, you were there?
Oh, it certainly was.
Just tell us about the experience first of all.
Wow, it was a beautiful day, and it was such for there being so much anger. It was a very friendly day.
Yeah.
Everybody was pumped. I think
Do we know, was there anyone arrested or anything at all? Like, I've heard nothing. Do we know, was there
no,
anything?
not that I've heard of either. And
No. All
I
right,
think I
cool.
would have.
Yeah.
It was very festive.
Mm.
People really wanted to go out and have their say, and it was people who voted for all sorts of different political parties and
Yep.
from all around Dunedin and Tairi and Clutha and Waitaki as well. So it was great. And I was right at the back to start with. And then I was with Ingrid Leary, who's the Tairi MP, and we ran forward so that we could hear the speeches and be on that piece of grass as well. It was great.
Yeah, it was amazing. I didn't do the walk. Sure, you did the walk. I had something on beforehand, so I just came to the Octagon. Me and the dog just came to the Octagon, and it was. I've only been in Dunedin a decade, right? So I'm not like you've been here 40 years, but I've never seen anything like that. And most people I spoke to, this is 1 in 4 people who live in Dunedin. So think about that, Aucklanders. That would be like a protest of 400,000 people at the Domain, right? That's what it would be like. Chewy, you did the actual walk as well. Tell us your experiences.
Yeah, so the official start time was 12 o'clock, and I thought, well, the vibe is that this was going to be quite big, so I thought I'd head down at 11:30. I was late at 11:30.
Right.
They had already filled out the area outside the dental school where they said everyone was to assemble. That whole intersection was full. I ended up being in probably roughly the middle, and it took 45 minutes to get from the start to the Octagon, which is usually maybe a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, there you go. That's George Street.
And the speeches had started before the last of the people started leaving the dental school. And it was, I think the thing for me is the range of people that were there. I spoke to people that had travelled up from Balclutha, that had come in from Wanaka. I saw a couple of BHN hoodies in there. I see you.
You told me that someone, look, the only reason we do this is to never have to buy another beer again. You said someone saw you buying a beer and didn't buy it for you. Is that right?
Yeah, very rude. And he's on my list. He's on my list now. But no, thanks to everyone that came up and said hi. But yeah, it was, I think Rachel's nailed it. It was a strange vibe because there was obviously very clear anger. But there were so many people that have never marched for anything, never protested for anything. This would be their first one.
Yeah.
And they were just like, this is incredible. Everybody's pulling in the same direction.
That's a great shot there.
I spoke to people that had voted for National.
Yep.
And a couple of them, one of the things that you got to stay hydrated on a protest. I've been doing this a long time. It's important. The comment that I heard from a National voter who voted for National in the last election, they said that the hospital for them was the single issue. It was important.
Yeah.
And it was a case of they'd come off Labour going, hey, look, we don't know if we're going to be able to get all of this across the line. Costs have gone up, that sort of thing. And then National going, no, we are going to do it. We are going to do it on time, on budget, with all the operating theatres, all the beds. It was so clear that they were going to do it. That was the issue for them that made them vote. And they were furious.
Yeah. Let's just pause for a second, Chewy, because I wanted to play this as well. Well, Rachel's here as well. This is 3 months before the election. Now, remember, this is the path that we went so far. Under National, John Key's National, this promise to rebuild was made. Labour came along. Let's be honest, they watered it down a bit. We weren't very happy at all. And then John Key, 3 months for the election, he promised to do more than Labour was doing. He promised to make it bigger and better. You might say, Chewy and Rachel, he promised to give Dunedin a Ferrari hospital.
Chris Laxon.
Oh, who did I say?
John Key.
Okay.
Oh, they're the same. He's wearing a bit of a fat suit, that's all. All right, let's have a look at these only 30 seconds from the start of the speech that he said of June, July last year. OD2's not liking me today, is it? Let's just do refresh and then push play. Come on, ODT.
What I want to announce today is that the National Party is going to build this hospital, but importantly, we're going to build this hospital back to the specification that it was originally intended.
So, for clarity, Labor just watered it down a little bit, and Luxon, the guy who used to run Air New Zealand, said, people, not what Labor's promised you, we're going to give you better.
In terms of giving us the capacity that we need and that we will need for the future with the generations to come. And what that means in particular is that we're going to deliver all the beds, all the operating theatres and all the radiology services that the Labor government has removed from the original specification for this hospital. And we think that's so important because we want to be able to build a world-class hospital that then actually can meet the needs of generations to come.
No, I think he misspoke. We think that's so important, so you'll vote for us and then we'll screw you over later on. Now, to the left of Mr. Luxon, I'm going to write that time, is a local MP in Dunedin back then, Mr. Woodhouse. Now, I contacted Mr. Woodhouse over the weekend and I said, dude, you were involved with this. You were there when these decisions were made. Your community needs to hear your voice. No, don't want to get involved. Left all that stuff behind me. And I don't know, he'll never see this, but I feel like Michael Woodhouse has taken the cowardly move. Chewy, you and I spoke to Chester Burrows, and he was like, this gang thing that this National Party is trying to do that is not going to work. It's a bad policy. You know, so often they get to think for themselves once outside of politics, but he's got a right to refuse. He steadfast refused. I'm really disappointed. I think his voice could have been very important in this as to being one of the people who was there when these promises were made. The other thing I noticed, Chewy and Rachel, is that clip there has been talked about in the mainstream media, but no one's really playing it. They're saying, you know, Luxon made these promises, but no one's actually playing the clips where he made the promises, which I think is important. Rachel, what's your response to this?
Yeah, Shane Reti as well is sort of now saying as well, we'll build something that's fit for purpose. And I was there during the election campaign because I was standing against Michael Woodhouse, and it was very specific that we were going to put back the things that Labor had taken out. And now what we see is this totally fabricated number of $3 billion.
Yeah, what is that all about? Because you guys are saying, where's this number from? You guys are in the House. Those of us kind of morons out here just hearing you guys, we're like, well, yeah, we haven't heard either. How do we explain this? What are you guys thinking?
Well, there's this report here, the Rust report that was done with the Infrastructure Commission, and it's an absolutely fine report. But what it says is it says some quite technical things about, maybe the governance structure of the new build could change a bit, and maybe there are some risks that need to be considered some more. But then it says three things. It says, well, there's also these three issues that haven't been dealt with. One of them is the pathology lab. One of them is an extra 250 car parks, and what is it? And the third one is what happens with the existing hospital, so the old hospital.
Yep.
Does that have to be refurbished somehow? Does that get sold off to someone else? What do we do with that? And so they've saying, well, this could lead to a lot more money, but it might not as well, because of course most pathology labs are private already, so you can get private providers to pay for any additional buildings there. Car parking is often a private thing as well, and it's queried the need for 250 additional car parks.
So hang on. So that $3 billion is based on what could happen if we paid for the pathology lab, if we paid for the parking, and if we refurbished the old hospital to do something with it. That's the $3 billion. So in other words, if they sold the old hospital to a developer who turned it into apartments for students, there'd be no cost there.
That's right. That's exactly right. And if somebody else did the car parks, then nothing there as well. And if the private pathology people did the private pathology, then nothing there either. So it's totally inflated the price.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the two buildings. So the two buildings are the inpatients building, which is the one where you showed the piles before, and the outpatients building. I don't know if you got any pictures of that, but that's the one that it looks like a building at the moment. The cladding is on.
Day by day, it seems to increase.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't actually finish until 2026, but it's there. It's a big building. And so when I was in the House, we had this urgent debate on Thursday, and Nicola Willis did the speech, and she was going on about how, they've built the it's the wrong place. The inpatients building, the one with the piles, it's the wrong place. It's a contaminated land. They lost the Cadbury's factory, and they thought it was magical that they could turn the old Cadbury's factory into the inpatients building, is what she said. And they seem obsessed with the word magic at the moment, the National Party, because Chris Bishop talks about that magical money tree, which they seem to have for tax cuts for landlords and tunnels in Wellington, but not for hospitals. But this report, the Rust report, it doesn't talk about it being the wrong site at all. So I was listening to her speech thinking, oh my God, they're going to move the inpatients building to some other part of Dunedin, or they're going to try and retrofit the existing hospital, which everybody said is an impossible thing to do. And if you're not from Dunedin,
that was impossible.
Yeah. And so, but in fact, that's not what the report says at all. So they're just trying to conflate everything into, this was madness that Labour ever said that the hospital should be built in this place, which happens to be an old chocolate factory. Even though it's right in the centre of town, it's next to the existing hospital, it's next to where the hospital, one of the 2 hospital buildings has already been built, and it's next to the university and the Polytech. Really important here because this is a training hospital.
Yeah, it's also, we kind of talked this through last week. It's not just about Dunedin. It's not just about the lower half of the South Island. This is one of the 2 main places that our doctors train. So doctors go out of these locations to the whole country. But on that point, over the weekend, it's never been more obvious over the weekend as to who is and isn't just a troll on Twitter, because there's been a vibe of people talking about Dunedin's hospital. Oh, it's a Labour city, of course. They put them, to which I put up a tweet that just to echo how it's not. This is not a Labour hospital or a Labour location. Because if you look at the South Island, and you go to the bottom half of the South Island, this is impacting far more regions that are national strongholds at the moment than little old Labour ones in the corner.
That's right. And Tardy, they got a lot of national vote as well. Dunedin didn't get so much, but it was a lot of green vote. But there were national votes in Dunedin as well. But all those other ones, very, very blue, as you show. Yeah,
and the point being that there's been ridiculous conversations online like, well, Central Otago is growing. It should be in Central Otago. To which you go, well, Central Otago's got 25,000 people. And even if you look at the population growth, it's not going to get to the same size as Dunedin if Dunedin didn't grow for about 100 years. And it's just, there's silly things going around at the moment where this is the bulk of the population in the bottom half of the South Island. This is where the resource needs to be. So all of those people out there can come in on helicopter when they need to, and can come in when they're able to buy a car.
And this is the tertiary hospital as well. I think when people are trying to call it the Southern Regional Hospital, which means it's for both Southland and Otago, but it's not just something out in the regions. It's a tertiary hospital. So when you're getting your cardiothoracic work done, you come to a tertiary hospital. When you are being helicoptered in for intensive care, you're coming to a tertiary hospital. And I think actually, Central Otago is growing, and we do need some more hospital provision in that part of the world. But there would be a secondary hospital, and it actually needs more primary care as well. It's crying out for more primary care, so more GPs and 24-hour clinics and things like that. Different from a tertiary hospital, which is more expensive to build as well.
I'm interested, Rachel, as to who you've been hearing from, because you talked about all sorts of voters were at the march, and that's true, but there's only one lot of voters that should feel most aggrieved, and that's the people who voted for National and ACT and New Zealand First, thinking they were going to change things and make things better, and they've only made things worse. Have you had any conversations, this is all anecdotal obviously, or been hearing from people who maybe are kind of going, oh, gee, maybe I voted for the wrong party and maybe you guys would have been better? Because it's one of these funny things that many people can't look at a situation empathetically or just logically unless it impacts them. It's like when it impacts them, they go, oh, I get it now. Are there a bunch of people out there who are kind of quote unquote getting it now because of what National's doing with this hospital in Dunedin?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly like some doctors and nurses type people that you wouldn't, I'd normally expect. Nurses might be different, but doctors are often quite conservative and can often vote for National. So I've been surprised by the number of them who've been so so angry by this and speaking to the media as well and being very frank with their opinions.
Yeah. Chewy, what else, man? Jump on in.
You guys have both mentioned helicopters, and I think that really actually hammered home to me as I left work today, because whenever you see a helicopter landing at Dunedin Hospital, somebody in our area has had a very bad fucking day.
A bad time, yeah.
For the first time in my memory, I saw 2 helicopters stacking up today.
Really?
So one was landing, another one was circling, waiting for that first helicopter to leave. I've never seen that. So all of these comments, and I've seen those comments online as well. Oh, you guys don't deserve a hospital because you're a safe labor seat, so why would they care? You know, it's not about that. This is big picture stuff, and this is when you want whatever side of the house is the government. I want them to put all of this petty shit aside and go, this is critical, national level, generational infrastructure. And we can quibble around the edges, sure. We can score points off each other, sure. But at the end of the day, this needs to be built. And you're not going to have people sort of go, wow, the money we spent on a hospital was a poor deal. Nobody's ever done that. No one's ever done that. And it's going to be the same with the ferries. The ferry and this hospital seem to be very similar to me. And in fact, even down to the numbers that they're mentioning, $3 billion, very big, scary number. Labor handled it atrociously. It blew out, rah, rah, rah. That's their narrative. But they have $60 billion in the transport budget for roads of national significance and that sort of thing. And we borrowed $14 billion for tax cuts for landlords. That's the choice that got made.
And the ferries and the Dunedin Hospital both affect the South Island quite a lot as well. And the comment about Dunedin being a safe seat forgets that we have MMP. Every vote in New Zealand counts. Yeah. So every person who votes for National in Dunedin, that vote goes to how many people they've got on their list. So that's a very foolish way of thinking about things. But I agree that the government, it's fabricating chaos. It's fabricating these exaggerated sort of extreme chaos. They seem to be saying that the ferry situation in the Dunedin hospital situation. And then they're just doing all these really little petty things. Like they come out of cabinet and talk about people need to stay, not work from home and things like that when there's these huge issues going on. And as you say, $14 billion on tax cuts, $2.9 billion for landlords. It's choices.
Clint Smith, friend of the show, Clint Smith, put out a very interesting tweet today. I will read it out for the audio podcast. Here's something that's bugging me, says Clint. Government is complaining about the ferry infrastructure and Dunedin Hospital costing too much. And Clint says $2 billion combined. That's $1 billion for the hospital and more, because it was $1.8 billion, so it's $1 billion. So that's the overrun, $2 billion. But it's a one-off, and these are assets with a 100-year lifespan. $2 billion is only 1.5 days GDP. Will future New Zealand thank this government for cutting corners? So over that 100 years, this is 1.5 days GDP for this stuff that we're doing. That's the numbers Clint have put out there. And I thought, Chewy, you say that National's very good at not being able to look forward. That if those numbers are accurate, take them as read, seems to possibly be a better way to think about this.
Yeah, so short-sighted and mean.
I think mean is is the right word. Mean is the right word. And beholden to, no matter what they say, beholden to, Chewy had a very good saying before the election, the only thing that National were trying to solve, the only problem they were trying to solve is how to get elected. That was it. And now the only problem they're trying to solve is how the fuck do we pay for these tax cuts and landlord reimbursements? And if we can take $1 billion from there and $1 billion from there and $1 billion from there, then that's how we'll do it. And school lunches, $100 million from there and whatever else. Chewy, I heard an in-breath. Go, sir.
So in the chat at the moment, we've attracted some national national cheer squad saying that this is Ardern's fault for the cost blowout and all of this sort of thing. Here's a question that I want to pose to you guys. National started this hospital rebuild, and one of the things that they investigated first, like I'm fun at parties, I pay attention to this shit, right? So when we were going to start building a hospital, one of the things that they looked at was retrofitting and doing up the current hospital that was built in the 1960s. Now, if you turn your brain on for half a second, you realize that trying to rebuild a hospital while it's still being a hospital would be a pain in the ass. It would be disruptive, and it would work out to be as expensive as building a new hospital. So they ruled that out really quickly. And they go, right, we have to build a new hospital in Dunedin. Next step, where do we want it? Do we want it on the flat, in the CBD, next to the university where we get our trainee doctors and nurses from? That sounds pretty good, right? All the transport links are there. Or do we want it way up in the hill suburbs where we get snow at Wakaari, which is also an old hospital that we'll need to knock down? And they ruled that out because ambulances don't like going up snowy hills. So it was on the flat. And that's when Cadbury's pulled out, and we've got a whole big clear site. This is what you said, Rachel, about Nicholas saying that it's contaminated. That is the first time I have ever heard that. You think that would come up before now?
Well, the thing is that the report doesn't talk about it because it's already been dealt with. There was some contamination in the land, and it was dealt with. And there was some issues with it being low lying, and it needed to be strengthened. And it was strengthened with some of the rubble, I think, from the old Cadbury's building as well. So all of those issues have been dealt with, which is why you now have that picture of the piles coming out of the ground, ready for a vertical build to go.
It's ready to go.
So hang on a sec. If there's national voters watching, I'm very sorry you found us by accident. But now that you're here, welcome. Here's my question to you. Do you think your leader, Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister of this country, the leader of the party you're sticking up for, should be believed? Should also stand by what he said? Now, all we do in this show is we hold this government accountable to the standard they expected of the last government. So if they had a problem with the last government doing something, we will hold them to at least that standard. And the standard they fucking set for themselves. I've already played the audio where Luxon said, world-class hospital, Ferrari hospital, coming your way. So I'm sorry, national voters. You don't get to blame Jab Cinder or any other incarnation of the Dame. What you get to do is go, this person made this promise, we're holding them to that promise. And that's the end of the conversation. Sorry, Joe, you're going to say something.
I was pretty much going to say exactly that same thing. If you are a national voter, if you are a national supporter, if you are a national cheerleader, then why are you not taking the statements from earlier this year from Shane Retty, the statements from earlier from this year from Luxon? Why are you not taking Luxon's words from the election, which we played earlier in the show? That's unequivocal. That's a fucking promise that he told Dunedinites, people in the South, this hospital's going to happen, right? He campaigned on that. People voted for that. If you were that person that voted for National because this region needs a new hospital, would you not be furious? Or is this something that you can justify your guy lying to a huge chunk of the country because you don't like Jacinda Ardern? Because that's fine. Like, don't come to this argument like you have the facts or you've looked at the numbers and you agree with the government. You're taking it from a position of rationality. You aren't. You're a fanboy. And I'm sorry, this is not the conversation for you. We call it how we see it. And if this, like, there are criticisms of National and there are criticisms of Labour. we're quite happy to criticize them where they get it wrong. We're quite happy to lash our team when they get it wrong. But in this case, as a national supporter, you should be pissed off that your guys lied, flat out lied, and are bad at numbers, and your leader's bad at politics, and God help him the next time he comes down this way. God help him.
We'll let you have a go soon, Rachel, we promise. But I've just realised one thing as we were sitting here. What these trolls and national sycophants are doing is they're basically holding Jacinda to her words, but not Luxon. That's what they're doing. They're saying, but Jacinda said, yeah, cool. Now, that's okay. And we can find criticism there. So you want to hold Labour or Jacinda accountable for what she said. We're just saying, fair enough. We want to hold Luxon accountable for what he said. Rachel, why don't you wrap up for us?
Okay. Well, look, it's outrageous that National is saying that this hospital is going to cost $3 billion and that we should be looking at other sites and throwing everything up in the air when they've got this report that was written in May that says there's some other issues that need to be thought about as well, issues that everyone's always known about. And the report also says there's a whole lot of other work, sort of quantitative surveying work and other technical work that's happening at the moment that will all be done by the end of August, and we'll have a much better idea of the building for the inpatients building specifically, not these other externalities, but the inpatients building specifically, exactly how much that is going to cost. It's October tomorrow. Yep. The minister came down and said, we're being fully transparent with you. We're showing you this document, lots of redactions, and we haven't heard, we don't get these other documents with it either. So that I don't know why they came down the 2 days before a protest. And on this day of the protest, they announced that the Waikato Med School is going the next step ahead. So I don't know if they're just trying to bundle everything up so it's all as bad as possible and then hope that people forget about it by the next election, or I don't understand the politics of it and what their plan is.
Well, that's Chewy's always guess, is that they're front loading all the bullshit so they can get away from it as far away from the election as possible. Hey, look, before we go, Rachel, I also want to say, because we often get accused of being an echo chamber, Christopher Bishop was asked on, didn't hear back from his people. So just once again, letting people know, we contact the other guys, they don't respond to us, they've had a crack, they're not here tonight. Rachel, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you being on board. Oh, and I'm sure we will talk again sometime soon.
Before we go, we have I've had several requests to ask this question. This one for you, Rachel. Do you play guitar, Rachel? What model is that behind you? It's a very pretty guitar.
It is. It's a Gibson, and it's my husband's. It's not mine. Sorry. No, not mine. It was his 40th birthday present.
Oh, cool.
Well, it's very pretty.
It is pretty, yes.
It's a good set. It's a good backdrop, actually, for doing Zooms as well. I think you
might
win,
I'm a bit worried about the reflection's not too bad. That's good.
No, it's good. All right, Rachel. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate your time, and keep fighting the good fight for this hospital. I know we will.
Great. Thank you. We'll do.
All the best.
Thanks, Rachel.
Right. Any super chats or anything that are going to go in?
I did star a whole bunch, so let's go. Let's strap in.
You go. Bro.
All right, Mr. Arvids, late fee, $2. Mr. Arvids again, $2. Rigetti Forgetti, Dunedin Hospital. Retty Forgetti. That's a good one. I also like Cigaretti. That appeared on a few signs this weekend. So what about the $216 million tax break given to Philip Morris? Yeah. Maybe that should go to the hospital. Yeah, absolutely.
Like they're trying to actively put more people in hospital thanks to those kind of tax breaks and the cancellation of smoke-free 2025, but they don't want to then flesh out the health system where those people are going to need to go.
I did see one sign with two young people going, fund the hospital for the smokers of tomorrow. I thought that was a good one.
That's very good.
Campbell, $9 super chat. I wonder if this is another nice to have. Honestly, this government's performance has been shocking. Absolutely. Arsehole. That's Sol, with the super sticker, which Pat can't see. Brian Turner, Aotearoa is governed on lies and corruption. Absolutely seems that way. So much corruption.
But wouldn't it? Isn't it nice?
Party president.
We get that's coming. That's coming.
That's coming.
But
just corruption.
Wasn't it nicer though under Labour when Aotearoa was governed on sausage rolls? Isn't that just a nicer feeling than lies and corruption?
I remember when that was a criticism of okay, we get it. We get it. Chippy likes sausage rolls. Maybe we shouldn't keep talking about it. Kiwi Burb, National, Labour bad. Yeah. Yep. Peter, with the divide and rule stuff between the regions really angers me too. Rachel Boyak's speech in the House rejecting that was important. Now, I saw a comment on Blue Sky from... I think it was the national candidate, the Labour candidate for Ireland, with a little bit of the behind the scenes for that speech. That speech that Rachel did and Ingrid Leary also spoke in that same round was off the cuff. They had a very, someone raised a point of order about the Dunedin hospital, and the way it generally works is someone will make a speech about it and the other side talks about it. But they've got to be quick. You've got to jump up.
Yeah.
So Labour just kept on jumping up and doing impromptu, very fiery speeches, while National tried to get its shit together because they didn't think that they'd get questioned about this in the House. This just ties into the thing. But our own mayor went up, I think, 3 weeks ago to talk to Retty and came back and said, no, everything's all sweet. I've been assured that the hospital is going ahead as planned. And then 2 weeks later, he gets shafted and lied to. This whole thing feels very knee-jerk. And the fact that they weren't prepared for the questions in the House kind of reinforces that for me.
Right.
But yes, they're going to try and play Otago Southland off against Nelson, off against East Coast, North Island, because apparently we now have to fight for hospitals. It's ridiculous, and we must stand together for this. Luxon's fourth quarter plan has no ferry plans included, for fuck's sake. Again, another reminder about the $216 million tax breaks for Philip Morris. They're really hard up, though. They need it. Yeah. All their customers keep dying. Cookie Nick with the standard late fee. The Bubba with government going to take its supporters on a joyride. And Frosty with this country demands Nordic public services on Mexican taxation. That's from Eddie Clark, a repost by Katia on Blue Sky. So yeah, thanks for your super chats, guys. As always, we love you guys humming along in the chat.
Yeah. And look, in all seriousness, if you are someone who disagrees with what we're saying and you are in the chat stuff, you're actually welcome. Sometimes we even open up the Discord to have chats with you. More than welcome to have serious debate. But you got to come strong, and by coming strong, I don't mean being aggressive. I mean having good, strong arguments. You can't a classic argument over the weekend was the amount of debt that Labour put us in. Yeah, the amount of debt that Labour put us in through COVID was half of the debt that John Key's government put us in. John Key added $50 billion to our debt, our national debt. Labour added $25 billion through COVID. So you got to come prepared. You got to come you know what you're talking about. And here's the other thing. You have to come with the humility to be able to change your mind. Because if you come without the agreement that you may change your mind, then you're just looking for an argument, and I'm not into that tonight. Anyway, sorry,
I'm into it. I'll jump on you. No, look, it's this thing. It's like this government loves hammering their talking points. Labour were bad managers. Labour blew out our debt. Our GDP is really bad. Our debt to GDP loading is top 3 in the world. We got through COVID in good order. We bounced back better than most countries. So this lie, and I'm just going to call it that. It is a lie that we're over borrow. It is bullshit. They had no problems pulling the trigger to borrow a suspicious amount of money that suspiciously matches up with tax cuts for landlords. And any time they got called on it, they said, but we campaigned on it. As we've seen today, they campaigned on the Dunedin hospital. So why are they not borrowing for that?
Yeah.
It was fine for landlords.
Yep.
Like this is the question that we're asking. And nobody seems to really get it. Like we know our bigger brothers in the media are sometimes a little bit slow, and they've got to watch our show to come up with some good questions. But eventually they'll get there. And that's the question every time. And then the next question should be, Mr. Luxon, when are you planning to go down to Octagon again?
That would be the question you ask after he says about how he got another $500,000 this week from selling his apartment with no capital gains tax on it.
It's tax free.
300,000. So
it's just free money.
Yeah,
it's just free money. He's entitled to it. Today is also the move-in date that he's moving into Government House, which has had $170,000 worth of renovations of new blinds and paint.
Yeah.
Because it was an unlivable shithole. But they've itemized a lot of the stuff that they did to Government House, and for some reason they itemized the Sky TV connection. Like, who the fuck gets Sky these days? And why are we paying for it?
Right. Zip. Let's move. Because I've got a little tangent. And it's only going to take a second because we've got too much to talk about tonight. I wonder if we're going to get a T-shirt here. I'm thinking I've drawn a little picture here. You probably can't see it, but 2 parallel lines with the word Chewy rant in it. And at the end of those parallel lines, it's kind of all fading out. And I wonder that if we were to make some Chewy rant T-shirts, that they could possibly, Chewy, go alongside something like this as a T-shirt, which I'm thinking about for
those of you that follow me on any of my social media platform would have seen that I changed all of my images to me, the little cartoon me, instantly. This was done by Emily last week.
Yeah. We're probably going to do a merch drop next week, and we're thinking about these T-shirts. I've got a few of them. I'm not going to show you them all, but we'll see what happens. This is an orange fade on blue that I'm about to bring up. There. Oh, and I opened up in the wrong one. I need to do that. There you go. There's orange fade on blue as well. There's a bunch of them that we're thinking about.
It's so good. It's so good. I love it.
So anyway, I just thought Chewy rant. I always thought I could do a Team Pat versus Team Chewy, but I know I'll get smashed, and my ego can't quite handle that. So we'll just do Chewy rant, and everyone who wants to do a Team Chewy can just get that. Hey,
chat. One of the things that I asked Pat to do is do me a compilation of all of my best rants, and he says he doesn't have the time. He doesn't have the time.
Let's get going, eh? Because this Mehdi Hasan thing I've got to get to as well. And I'm not rushing through Seymour to get there, but we'll do Seymour first because
I'd rush through Seymour.
David Seymour was on Q&A over the weekend, and they talked about all sorts of stuff. I'm really hoping we don't get any skipping going on here. Sometimes YouTube skips for us because it's been sitting there for a while, but we'll see how it goes. David Seymour on Q&A over the weekend. Let's just get into some of the questions. Jack Tame, this new truancy rules things they've got. Jack Tame's found the hole in it. There's really an easy way around that.
To stop a parent from just blaming illness. A parent certainly could do that, and a lot of this is about what you might call soft power, or selling it to people. So better information about what really is illness, and when you sometimes can go, because we were told for several years that health comes above all else. It's often true, but not always. So we publish that guidance.
I mean, if you think about a parent though who's got a kid who's sitting around at home playing video games all day at the moment, and the parent for whatever reason isn't getting that kid to go to school, if the school then calls the parent and says, "Why is David or Jack not in school today?" There's nothing to stop the parent saying, "Oh, he's sick."
They certainly can, but I mean, I think you've got to be a bit cautious about stereotyping. These situations are so complex.
Did you hear that? They certainly can. So there you go. There's the whole truancy plan out the window with one sentence. So the people they're trying to get to are what they would describe as perhaps difficult students with difficult parents. If that's the makeup, if you've got parents who also can't give a shit about the authority, figure, then how's this going to help? The only way it's going to help is if then they have people turning up, Chewy. And that's the next step. Or forcing these people to go and get sickness, certificates from their doctors, of which they may not be able to pay for or afford. So that's where we're going. That's where they're going. Because actually, that's the only way the system will work. If they've got some kind of truancy Gestapo that then goes around and checks that all those children are actually sick, or else it just won't happen. It won't work like they think it's going to. It won't work anyway, but that's the only way for their system to be put in place. And I'm not using the word Gestapo to call them Nazis. It just seemed right at the time. I'm saying that because we're about to have a chat with Mehdi Hasan, who him and Piers Morgan agree that using those kinds of words aren't necessarily good. They're not the Gestapo because that's their politics. They're like the Gestapo because that's their politics. Anyway.
Complicated from what I've heard, talking to people in the last few months. So, for example, I talked to a youth aid police officer recently who has a collection, he tells me, of Xboxes and PlayStations that he's confiscated off children out of their homes. And I said, hang on, aren't you supposed to stop burglary? And he said, well, actually, the parents asked me to take them because the parents don't feel...
You know what? I don't believe that for a second.
I would like to speak to that officer.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second.
They don't want them to go to school. They don't feel they have the authority within their own home. They're literally asking him to play the bad cop. So, what we're doing here with the step to tenants response scheme is we're saying the parents have obligations, the students have obligations, the school has obligations, and we as government and other government departments such as Oranga Tamariki and the police also have obligations. As a child's attendance gets worse, if it goes outside that 90% zone, then there's a stepped response at each stage here.
It just seems like a very...
There we go. So there's the first thing, Chewy. Truancy model, if the parent just goes, oh, Jack's sick, then the truancy model falls over. We'll keep trucking, because we've got a few to get through, because the next conversation, which I'm sure infuriates most people, is talking about school lunches.
School lunches. Documents released with the budget found the free school lunch program was super effective. Quote, initial findings indicate the program is having a profound impact on the well-being of learners. Profound. You then cut $107 million in funding from the scheme. What will your cuts mean for the impact of that program?
So a couple of things. First of all, if you want to get...
Very important question that he asked in the framing of the question. For the impact. He's talking about the impact of the scheme, not the cost of the scheme.
Down to really robust evidence, like really statistically, valid comparisons of schools that have them and schools that don't have them, and do more children come to school. The ministry did 5 different studies. One of them found that there may be a 1.6% improvement in children coming to school at a school that has the healthy school lunch program.
So that standard proof study found it was associated with improved attendance for some kids, which was equivalent to 3 days annually, which is substantial.
Well, if there's 200 days a year, then 1.6% is 3 days, isn't it?
Isn't that funny? How 3 days is substantial, but we've said this before, when they want to use the numbers in a certain way, they'll change the metric. So he's changed it to 1.6 rather than 3 days. Because, they're trying to keep people at school for all but 5 days a term. I know there's 4 terms, but 3 days is not insignificant to help kids stay at school. But that's not good enough for these guys because it's costing money and there's landlords to pay off. 3 days, not good enough.
I agree with that. 1.6% is what they found. Now, all I'd say to you is that if they really have, as you said, profound increases in well-being...
That's what your advice said, not what I said.
Well, it's not my advice. It's advice I think
advice provided to you as the Associate Education
I get all sorts of advice.
It's a profound impact.
Oh, okay.
I bet you do.
Should we give them some advice? This is this time where they actually ignore the experts. Remember how Nicola Willis was saying last week, I think it was around the ferries, wasn't it? Oh, we're just waiting for the experts to tell us. And they use the experts to delay as an excuse. And then when they don't want to use them, which is every time they make a legislative change, they ignore the experts. So, yep, he's been given expert advice. And he's like, look at that smirk, that rimmer smirk. Oh, yep, we get lots of advice. I'm sure you do walking down streets in New Zealand. I'm sure you hear all sorts of pieces of advice, Chewy.
Oh, freely offered advice too.
Yeah.
Where's it gone? Great comment. Keep defending people who don't care if their children are in school. You guys are disgusting. Cole, we're just playing the video, buddy. But in this video, it features a libertarian going full nanny state. Someone who once said it's not the state's job to raise your children. Just a little bit of hypocrisy there. Just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah.
on the well-being of learners.
So I mean, you got to sort of square the circle, right? Like some people say it's a profound impact, but it didn't even get a 2% increase in actually coming to school. If it was something was profoundly,
See, it didn't say profound impact on attendance. It said profound impact on the well-being of learners.
No, I understand what you're saying, but my point is
it's a broader impact, isn't it?
My point is that if something,
Jack, I understand what you're saying, and your point doesn't line up with the narrative I'm trying to paint. So I'm going to minimise it and move on to my point now.
Was profoundly improving your well-being, wouldn't you make more than a 2% effort to get it?
Well, my question is, what impact will your cuts to that funding have on the?
Possibly it's going to make it even better. I'm cautious about how I comment on this right now because as we speak, our excellent people on the expert advisory group are in negotiations with the providers, so I don't want to compromise their position. But all I'll say is that there's been a lot of interest. It's very competitive. It's amazing what you can do. I was even amazed at the quality of the offerings from the providers. And put it this way, we may well end up doing this at $3 a student. In fact, I'm pretty confident we will. I suspect we might actually get better product out of it. And previously, Labor were doing it at 8.
You were saying that word before about magic, Chewy, that magic word, that they're going to pay a lot less and the quality of the food's going to be better. This is magical world we live in. Do you think? Maybe they're going to go to the maybe they're going to the bowling green. Maybe they're getting all the meals delivered from the bowling green here in Dunedin. Maybe bowling club.
So again, he paints it like they always do. Is that Labor spent all the money for low quality meals when they could have just spent less money on high quality meals. What a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Like there's so much, we've covered this so much with him talking about school lunches. The man does not know how to feed in bulk. And the fact that if you fed all the kids, you would be able to do it cheaper per head. You would also remove any stigma about poor children get free meals, non-poor children don't need to. And so you cast that social curse at people. He's completely brushed past the fact that it's good for learners to be fed, which is just some rock solid, like, did you not know this? And he's just focused on the fact that they couldn't bribe kids to school with a free meal. And somehow he's thinking by cutting it and lowering the quality and the per head price somehow, that the cheaper meal is somehow going to do it. What planet is this guy on? Does he even keep track of the threads that he's trying to weave?
All right, this clip's got 60 seconds. Let's get through it.
$8.61. Now, if they had introduced the model we're introducing 5 years ago, they could have saved nearly $1 billion and got the same result.
It wasn't always $8.61, just to be clear. It was between just over $6 and $8.60.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, the point is we're saving $3 to $5.
Sure. But so back to that question, though, because I think you talked about the tendering process. Is there a risk that you will get worse outcomes by cutting funding?
Well, I think there was already a wide variety of outcomes, but what we're seeing in the
across the board, is there a risk?
Well, there's always a risk until you sign the contract and see the first lunch sign up.
So what is that risk? Talk to us about that risk.
Well, the risk is that people won't like the quality that they get. I mean, that is a risk. I'd be lying if I said that we can absolutely guarantee what's going to show up at the end of a tendering process, but every indication is that we can do as well or better with less money by being smarter. That's what every business, firm, farm, family in this country's had to do for the last 3 years. Now we've got a government that's doing it.
See how he muddies it, though? He says there's every indicator that we can do better with less money. And then he goes, every business, home, farm has had to do that for the last few years. He said we can do it better for less money. And then he said, and others have had to tighten their belts. They're not the same thing. He's not saying everybody else who did this had to save money and they all got better outcomes as well. So he's really kind of trying to, it's this shell game we talk about. He's selling the idea that they can do better on less, and then he's saying everyone else has had to pay less or spend less. But he's not saying all the other people who spent less are doing better, but they're going to. It's just it's an ultimate shell game. In fact, that's the end of the clip. It's up to there. I've got clips on the treaty principles to come from him, Chewy, but do you want to jump in with anything in between?
Yeah, look, I love that he's acknowledging that the quality might go down and that they might not like the quality that they get when he's talking about lowest common denominator slop that he wants to serve our young citizens. Yeah. I think that's part of the plan, personally, because then the next stage is, hey, look, we've spent all this money. We've been so generous and we've provided these meals, but there's so much wastage because it's fucking boiled polystyrene blocks and gravy, you know, and then he can just write off the whole thing as not being an effective program. David Seymour doesn't give a fuck about these kids unless he's Snapchatting them. Like the fact that he's associate education minister, and this is the best that he's got, full nanny state, a mysterious community cop that seems to be hoarding Xboxes, and we can do more with less on the natural superiority of the right-wing party for feeding the masses is just such fairyland bullshit. I don't know why he didn't just burst into flame.
I'll tell you something that's worth keeping an eye on as well. It's a thing that I saw today, actually. There was a YouTube clip talking about some big YouTubers, KSI and Mr. Beast and Logan Paul, who are starting up a school lunches thing. And I'm just going to show you a freeze frame. I don't want to get kicked or anything, but there was a doctor who did this conversation, and there's this product out there at the moment called Lunchables, and these YouTubers are going up against them with a product called Lunchify or something like that. And the most interesting point, and this is worth keeping out, this is the product that's out at the moment, Lunchables, and he went through and he kind of worked out all the issues with it and what it was. But
heavily processed shit.
But the biggest thing he found was Lunchly. That's what it's called. Those Lunchly products are healthier than the Lunchables, but the most interesting thing is the sodium and the sugar and all those kinds of thing levels were below recommended, but they're only 300 calories. And the doctor points out children are supposed to get 650 calories at lunchtime. That's what they need for their bodies to work. So actually, if the meal doesn't give them enough calories, then their brains won't work well enough in school. So therefore, if you then made all these kind of processed shit meals sort of thing, if you made them all to the amount of calories using the formulas that these guys are doing, then you'd be having like double or triple the amount of sodium and sugars, because they can say there's X amount of sugar in this option, but what they're not saying is this option only gives you about 40% of the calories you need. So to actually have a meal made of this stuff to the correct calorie level you need, it would be 2.5 times what this is, and then that puts it off the charts altogether. And it made me think about school lunches here, about what they're going to do. Really, really, really careful to keep an eye on what they're offering, and not just what it is on a health scale to do with calories and sodium and all that kind of stuff, but what calories it has got, that it reaches the amount, not just how many salts and sugars and carbs and fiber that it's got, because it's got to be the right number of calories for a kid's brain to work through the rest of school as well. So that's just by chance I saw that today, and it's I'm intrigued by it. Indeed.
Just those three pitching a product at children just gives me the shits, as I'm sure their product will. They're just terrible people.
The next clip we're going to look to is we can get to a couple of clips now on the treaty principles. The first treaty principle was, the first conversation was Jack Tame talking to him about how treaty principles was supposedly a bottom line for you, but it's not going to go through. But it was a bottom line. What happened there?
So during the election campaign, you said a binding referendum on the treaty principles would be a bottom line in exchange for your party's support in government, an absolute top priority. And yet here we are, a year on, and the only way that we will have a binding referendum is if National agrees to pass your law, which the Prime Minister says explicitly and in the plainest language he will not support. So why do we capitulate on that bottom line?
Well, they also said that there was no way that they'd have any of it. I guess what you found is that you've got two parties, and I think Chris has said the same thing. Neither side's particularly happy with it because no one got everything they wanted. But critically, what we have allowed is...
This is your number one priority during the campaign. All of those people who supported ACT did so knowing that your absolute top priority was, the bottom line was a binding referendum. And here we are, you're in government, and we don't have one.
Well, what we do have is a bill that is finally going to democratise what the treaty principles...
It's the wrong bill we want to hear about, Mr. Seymour. The bill is $4 million. For this waste of time. That's the only bill that matters, to be frank.
Mean because for a long time, unless you're a judge or on the Waitangi Tribunal or an academic or a public servant, you don't get much say on what our founding document means. For the first time...
I love that statement.
What the fuck?
Yeah, you don't get much say. Like, could you imagine in America if it was like, well, everyone of the public needs to decide what the amendments in the Constitution, if they should all decide. Like, you know what, Seymour, you're right. We don't all get a say on our founding document. It's a founding document between two parties. You don't get to rewrite the whole thing and have 5 million people sign off on it. It doesn't work that way, shall we?
Yeah, I wasn't there. My name's not on it. I wasn't a representative of Queen Victoria either. I don't expect a democratic say in the Treaty of Waitangi. What a ridiculous position that is going to play well with his support.
Yeah.
But absolutely makes zero sense to anyone with even just a skerrick of a brain.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
And we're going to democratise the debate on that. Now, is that as far as I'd like to go? No. Has it significantly changed the debate? Yes, and you can see that because of the reaction you're getting from all these people who don't want the great unwashed to be able to have a say about our constitutional future.
We'll talk about the process once the bill is introduced. What is the risk if we don't go through this process and have this debate?
I think the risk is that we increasingly adopt a version of the treaty which says it's a partnership between races. That's what the Court of Appeal said. It's what the Prime Minister...
It's a partnership between the Crown and iwi. The dog whistling he's doing, it's a partnership between races. So if one of the people who came across and agreed to it was Welsh and one was English and one was Scottish, they signed on behalf of the Crown, the Queen. They didn't sign on behalf of a race. And with the people who were already there, who were the owners of the land, it was an agreement between the owners of the land and the Crown. This dog whistling racial undertones of, I got to signed on based on race. It's just because they were different races doesn't mean it was an agreement based on race. If I moved to a foreign country, if I moved to India and wanted to start up a business, and I started up a business and I signed a document with a group there, a business there, it wouldn't be even though we were different races, it wouldn't be an agreement based on race. It would be an agreement based on the people who were there making the offer and me coming on board and saying, yes, I want to do this. This dog whistling is so revolting.
A version of the treaty which says it's...
Sorry, Joe.
I was just going to say we've had a prime minister call us bottom feeders. We've had a deputy prime minister, or soon to be deputy prime minister, refer to most of us as the great unwashed.
Yep.
Is this just out the gates arrogance?
Yeah, and it's smarmy, and it's also, I think, what you're saying. One of the problems Seymour has now is getting re-elected, probably holding this government together once he becomes deputy prime minister, and trying to become the preeminent number 2 in the right to get rid of Winston. And so he's still speaking to his base and the base he'd like to attract for the next election.
Partnership between races. That's what the Court of Appeal said. It's what the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern repeated 35 years later, sorry. And as a result, we increasingly see ourselves not as human beings and New Zealanders with challenges and choices and problems to solve and overcome, and as we go through our lives, we see each other as Maori or non-Maori. And once you start telling people to think of each other in racial terms, the danger is people will start to actually do it. I feel to some extent they have, and our country's become more divided. I think it's important that we actually say, no, everyone's allowed to have a discussion about this. It's not going to be all terrible. Actually, New Zealanders can have a discussion about our constitutional future. We're going to have that discussion. Will it go as far as we like? Possibly not. On the other hand, as I've said...
You accept that now?
Well, it's possible that they won't, but I also just make the point that I think that this is going to be a lot more positive and uplifting than people believe. And once you see where it gets to, people say, we actually can have a say in our constitutional future. It might end up being a more popular idea than some people expect.
How much is...
I do not think so. One other clip that I want to share with you. I don't know what that one is. Oh yeah, that's the Gaza one. And this last clip is about treaty principle. Well, basically, it's under 2 minutes. Why even bother? Like, why bother doing this? It's you know what? We don't need to play that because I'll give you the answer. You know what? I'll give him credit. His rationale for why bother makes a logical conclusion and sense. He says why bother, and his answer to that is, well, we could have said that about when Michael Laws brought out the assisted dying bill like 20 years ago, but that started a conversation which gone into making that law. That's the pitch he's making. He's basically stealing the Green Party manifesto, where you ask Julian Genter, I have done this, why, you want affordable quality housing as a right, and she does say, well, it's an aspiration for maybe 20 years from now. That's what he says. Why bother? Because it's an aspiration, and maybe in 20 years from now, it'll be a change. I think that's all we need to get from him, because that's what the whole last clip is, and we've got more to get to, Chewy. But yes, sir, you welcome. Jump in if you want to say anything to do with this so far.
It's great to see David Seymour be a twat on 3 subjects all at once. But I think the most egregious thing here is the positioning that he takes around this reframing of the treaty principles. that there's this laughable notion that we need everyone in this country to have a democratic say on a treaty that was signed between the Crown and the indigenous people of
the landowners,
this place.
People who were here first.
Is laughable. Like, I think he's panicking, because the longer this goes on, there is more understanding amongst the general public now about let's say the treaty just as a catch-all, but we're really talking about Titariti. If someone like me all the way down here in the South Island could learn that actually there are two treaties and it isn't a direct translation, and under international agreement it's the one in Toreo that is the important one,
the indigenous
that's
language.
the one that most people signed, then it can get through to any numbskull out there about what we're talking about. But the thing is,
unless they're being disingenuous. If they're being disingenuous, it won't get through. Anyone who chooses to participate in this conversation as an honest actor, let me put it to you this way: if someone from Indonesia signed a contract with someone from France, right, and it was the Indonesian company wanting to say something to the French company, and they wrote the agreement both in Indonesian and in French, the French people are going to understand and sign the French version, because that's what they understood. No difference. In the treaty, both versions, Māori and English, Māori understood the Māori version. The English one, whilst it is a historical document, is basically a paperweight when it comes to law, because that's not the one that Māori understood. Māori understood the one that was in Māori. So that's why that carries more weight. Sorry, Troy.
And just historically, that's the reason why the one in Māori is the one that has the most signatures. There's about 50 signatures on the English translation, and that's purely because they ran out of room, and they just basically said, "Yeah, this is the same thing." Okay, and then we threw it away and let rats chew on it. That's how important it was. It got colonists in the doors, and that's all that matters. But now David Seymour wants to put it up as this is something we should all have a say on. And I think the most dangerous and malicious thing that he's doing here is he's going after immigrants to this country that have zero understanding of this.
Yeah.
And going, if you don't go along with me, you're a second-class citizen to the Māori. Which is just such a bald-faced fucking lie. But he knows that that's where he'll get numbers. What he's scared about is the generations that are coming through school now with a greater understanding of New Zealand history than we have ever had. And he knows that if he leaves it for another generation, there is no way that this is going to fly. You cannot put race relations in this country to a fucking referendum, which is what he wants.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
100%. Hey, look, we're going to keep trucking because we've got another whole thing to do, and it's getting up there. Thank you for KiwiScoop for the super. I didn't know this. Ella S, I'm becoming a permanent resident of Aotearoa. There you go. Thanks for that super chat as well, KiwiScoop.
Oh, nice.
NZ Random says NACT, National Act. Yesterday's words are today's turds. That's what you say when you're talking shit. You talking shit? I can see it on your chin. What's it on your chin? Oh, you're talking shit. Oh God, spew more vomiting BS again from Worming. Thanks for the super chat. Timmy Turner, the taking of the Xboxes is a lot like eating cats and dogs. Trump talks about it. Both people are full of it. Because I care, thanks for the super chat. Procurement team at Mo believe the tenders are shit. Ministry of Education? Enterprise?
Yeah.
Citizen Gold, the idea that schools wouldn't already be trying to get best for their buck is fracking bollocks. Seymour really is the worst example of a human. Kiwi Bird, thank you for it. David Seymour lives on planet Atlas. Peter says, Oliver Twist times ahead. Please, sir, can I have some more? Tawhiri, Rothbard admitted he stole libertarianism from the left, admitting that libertarian inherently meant anti-private property, and he just appropriated it. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you again for your super chat as well, Campbell, $17. So I have to work my hat off every day and pay taxes to pay this clueless white supremacist salary when he thinks police confiscating Xboxes is an important talking point. Can I have a refund? Maybe at the very least, we should all get to play on the Xboxes. Like there has to be some kind of fringe benefit for us. Can I say fringe benefit in this day and age? Is that all right? Not talking about tax, are we? Thank you, Campbell, for the super chat. Wooming says, dare Spewmore to eat his $3 slop for a year. All right, if you dare him to do that, yeah, that would be... They do that sometimes when politicians turn up, don't they? They feed them the school lunches. I've seen that happen before in the UK and stuff. Ken Spark, spontaneous combustion is a thing, apparently. Tafari again says, okay, then Seymour, using your logic, since we don't get much say on CEOs, we should democratize the workplace. Socialism. That's actually quite a nice little turnaround there, son. I like that one. If you ever chose to come and talk to us, we'd ask him that. Clara Gilmore, thank you for your super chat. I have no more to say. It's in the ballot. David Seymour, the Assistant Prime Minister. That's a terrifying thought, isn't it? Katie from Scotland. It's a £4.99. That means that's about 40 or 50 New Zealand dollars. Scotland, hang on. Scotland does not have any say on the Union of Parliament. That's hard to say, even though it was between Scotland and England. We were sold out for money. Is that all right? Is that offensive? I could be appropriating stuff. Mind you, it doesn't sound anything
I don't know if it is. It feels a bit hate crimey.
Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop and ask for you always. It's easier to ask forgiveness and permission. Tiffany says, I don't want to see him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I see what you did there. And Arvid says, puck you. It's my turn on the Xbox, Dunedin. Very good. All right.
I've got one short pictorial tangent.
Go, sir.
Remember when David Seymour said that Atlas was a conspiracy theory that was popular in the left, and he laughed it away?
I think he was. I think he was saying that because obviously he's been there, but I think he was saying that the influence that Atlas had was the conspiracy theory. That's how I always read that. But yes.
Mm. Here's a picture of David Seymour at an Atlas event in Miami in 2016. David Seymour, Alan Gibbs, Ruth Richardson, Roger Douglas, and Tom Palmer. They're all New Zealanders. They're all deeply involved in this. This is the New Zealand initiative. So if that ever comes up again, that he doesn't know what Atlas is, or it's all a big conspiracy theory.
I was speaking with a journalist. I was speaking with a journalist the other day who was asking me about doing some prep work with them. And I said, it's very simple. And if I say this out loud now, someone else is going to use it. And I guess that's okay. But you know that no one else has thought of this. So if you hear it, you know where it came from. All you need to do is sit Seymour down and go, when you studied the leadership training model at Atlas, what was the best thing that came out of it for you? That's it. That's what you've got to say. You don't have to challenge him. Everyone knows. He knows. What did you learn when you were studying at Atlas? What was your actual essay about that you won the prize for to international travel for Atlas? What was the essay about? You don't have to get all argy-bargy and, you just ask him the question. All right, speaking of asking the question, oh my goodness. Now, what I'm going to do, let me show you, baby birds. See all these tabs here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's all Mehdi Hasan tabs. But I have actually highlighted a few because I thought we might run short of time, which I think are the best. This is an hour-long conversation, and I've got 9 clips out of it, and I could have 39. Like every time they talked, we could have reviewed it and looked at it. But let's just go through a few of the ones that I've purposely starred in my own little book here. So I thought if we run out of time or run short, that these are the best bits. So this commentary here is happening halfway through the show, and it's Piers both siding an occupation. People both sides something. So this is an example of Piers Morgan both sidesing something.
You're always very keen to put it all on Israel.
No, because if we're talking about...
I try and be a little bit more like, hang on, when you commit a terror attack on the scale of October 7th...
You both sides occupation and illegal...
No, I don't.
Yeah, you are. You just said,
I don't.
I try and be fair. You can't be fair to an occupier. By the way, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, this is what frustrates me. And I know my friend Owen Jones sat here and...
This is brilliant. What he he makes Morgan look like a fool. Last time we talked about Piers Morgan, we said he's no longer a journalist. This just proves it time and time and time again. You can call him a chat show host, you can call him a shock jock, you can call him an interviewer, but he is no longer a journalist.
Said the same thing to you. When we talk about Russia, Ukraine, you don't do both sides. You blame Russia as the invader and occupier. You don't do that with Israel. That is the double standard on your part.
No,
I try and be consistent, Piers. I'm morally consistent. I say Russia, hold on, let me finish the sentence. Russia illegally invaded and occupied Israel.
Just so you're, in case you're just joining us, it's not Medhi's show. I know it feels like Medhi's show, the way he's controlling this. It's actually not his show.
Someone just comes out and puts tape over Piers
And
Morgan.
Israel is doing the same thing in the West Bank, Gaza, the Golan Heights.
As you know, they are completely different.
Yeah, Israel's worse. It's been going on much longer. People living under much worse conditions.
But
they've killed more kids.
There is no similarity in these two situations.
Agreed. Israel's is worse.
It's not.
How many kids have been killed in Ukraine versus Gaza?
Well, in 1 year.
Ever.
In 1 year?
Ever. Take whatever point you want. More kids have been killed in Gaza than in Ukraine.
Okay.
Every human rights group agrees with that.
What's happened in Ukraine? We can come to Ukraine. What happened in Ukraine is a Russian dictator invaded illegally.
We agree on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But we don't agree on Israel because you're not consistent.
I think Israel is much more complicated.
That's complicated, as my friend Ta-Nehisi Coates pointed out the other way, is just a good way of avoiding attributing moral responsibility. It's complicated. No, it's not complicated, actually. Israel is the occupier under international law. Israel is the one killing the vast majority of civilians. Right now, it's not a liberal democracy. It's run by neo-fascists now.
Well, I don't disagree with you. There are some right-wing headbangers on that cabinet. I also think that Netanyahu has to go. I also think the whole of Hamas have to go, right?
Under no scenario is it liberal democracy right now. Palestinians do not have the same rights.
But let me come.
There you go. So there's number one. Honestly, Chewy, this is just goes and goes and goes and goes. We'll go straight to the other clip because this is actually where he once again has his hypocrisy around Israel pointed out. This is Piers Morgan, by the way.
I'm saying that the way of the gun, the military solution to everything, is a failure, whether you think it's moral or immoral.
How should Israel respond?
I've told you, end the occupation. You don't want to talk about the occupation, Piers. You don't want to talk about the 500 dead. I'm telling you that's the root cause. Israel wants to do everything except what every smart person is telling them to do. Even members of their own security establishment are telling them to do. End the occupation. And then see what happens.
You say
nobody's waking up in the morning saying we want to kill Israel for no reason.
You say, Medhi, all roads lead to the occupation.
Yes.
Okay? Israel would say all roads lead to Iran.
Who cares what Israel says? They've lied for the last year. They've lied for 30
cares what they say?
Yeah, do you care what Russia says?
No.
This is what I'm saying. You're inconsistent. The occupier and the invader doesn't... I don't care
It's not a barbaric...
if you're a liberal democracy,
man.
they're not a liberal democracy. And second of all...
Well, they are.
No, they're not. They're an ethnocracy. But even if they were a liberal democracy, you don't get to invade other people's land. That's not an excuse. Piers, you sound like you're justifying an illegal military occupation here.
No, I'm not.
You just did. You said they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like you're justifying occupation.
You're extrapolating two things together. Why?
I said it's an occupation. You said, but they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like a justification.
I'm just coming back to one thing.
He's so good.
God damn.
He's so good. And needless to say, it won't evolve in anything, but I have already tried to get Mehdi Hasan on this show. We'll see. So, Chewy, look, I've got more to go, mate. I've got plenty more, but there's a space for you to chat so far.
He's absolutely correct. Like I love it. Piers' whole thing seems to be getting publicly owned. And go, no, I didn't. That's not what I said. Oh no. I don't see that this is a hard thing to hold in your mind at the same point. Russia invaded Ukraine. So Russia bad. Russia do war crimes. Russia bad. Ukraine, good guy. See? Very easy. And then I can see here that if you just take what Hamas did on October 7th, you go, that's very bad. That is very bad. It's not as bad as what Israel said it was. Now, remember, Israel lied to everyone. Babies in ovens, babies being raped, headless babies. None of that happened. None of it. They haven't produced any proof. They have rebuffed every opportunity to get those hostages back because they have taken the opportunity to completely flatten Gaza. They've gone from the top all the way down the bottom, and then they've gone from the bottom all the way to the top. They keep on dropping bombs on tents. Like, it is very clear to me that Israel are the bad guys here.
Yeah.
Hamas, not good guys. Not good guys.
I think that's pointed out beautifully. The next clip we're going to play, I've just headlined Piers' inconsistency. So we might have a strike 3 coming up for him in that same kind of block. But look, Spit Icor says, I would love to if Medhi came on the show, but I think we probably need another 1 million viewers on stream before we get him. Yeah, I think you're probably right. So that's up to you guys. It's got nothing to do with me and Chewy. That's your guys' responsibility, not ours. We do what we do. You guys do the rest. All right, let's have another clip. And you know what, Chewy? Because you've just brought up October 7th, there is going to be some other clips I play rather than the most important starred ones, because there is a part where they talk about using October 7th as an excuse. It's a very interesting kind of interaction as well. This is some more on Piers' hypocrisy.
Don't you think someone like you with your huge platform should be calling that out consistently?
I do, but I also
No,
think...
you just gave me a whole thing. Iran backs Hamas, Hezbollah, terrorism. That just sounds like an Israeli narrative.
You take one side completely.
Just like you do in Ukraine.
No, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm consistent. I take the side of the Ukrainian people under occupation and the Palestinian people under occupation. I'm consistent.
No, you're not. They're totally different situations.
You have to say that because you're not consistent.
And you have to say what you say.
No, but I literally described it. 2 people's under foreign occupation, 2 people's having their hospitals bombed, 2 people's having their kids killed, 2 people facing governments to say genocidal stuff. Yeah, I'm consistent.
One is a democracy and an ally of the
Says
West.
you.
And one is not.
ally of the West. What little slip in there? What's that got to do with anything? So allies of the West get to be genocidal?
No.
Why did you say ally of the West?
I don't believe what they're doing in
So
Gaza.
if Russia was an ally of the West, they could kill people in Ukraine?
I don't believe what they're doing in Gaza is genocide. You do, I don't.
Well,
genocide is the complete...
Put genocide to one side. Whether we agree or not on genocide, and it is genocidal.
It's not genocide.
You just said they're your ally of the West. Why is that relevant?
I think it's important that you support...
So if you're an ally of the West, you get to kill kids?
No, you get
support. So why is it relevant?
You support...
You're making my point for me, Piers. I'm consistent. I don't care whether you're an ally of the West or an enemy of the West.
Fine.
I care about what you do.
Yes.
And Russia and Israel both committing war crimes, both saying genocidal stuff.
But Medhi, here's my point. You are so blindly anti...
Does it sound like other conservatives? What I'm trying to say is, what I meant by that is, here's what I'm saying. You know, it's like that's an for some people. I need a second to think what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm saying. And then comes out and says it.
Israel. That you frame everything...
I could say the same thing to you about Russia.
I'm very blindly against Russia.
Okay, that's again. So you're inconsistent. I'm consistent. I'm blindly anti-occupying Russia that occupies Ukraine, and I'm blindly anti an Israel that occupies Gaza. By the way, another area I'm consistent is I do think both wars need to come to an end, and they're going to come to an end through some sort of negotiation. I don't believe in prolonged conflict. I don't know. I'm not a negotiator.
What's a negotiation in Ukraine?
I don't believe there's a military solution.
One of the things that's also very, very good about Medhi is when he doesn't know, he just goes, I don't know, like this. How's it going to come to an end? I've got no clue. It's not my area of expertise. And I think that in modern debate or modern conversation is a skill that too many people are afraid of. I don't know is a perfectly valid answer. If you don't know, unfortunately, and you see it amongst a lot of people online, they always try and have the answer. They always try, and what that then becomes is an ideological answer, and what that then becomes is like being a zealot rather than thinking it through. Sometimes we don't know. And he's perfectly comfortable saying, I don't know, which I think actually shows strength rather than weakness to be able to acknowledge it.
Solution to either conflict.
Give me the solution.
I don't have one. Do you have a military solution? I don't think there is one.
We can't possibly give Putin what he's taken.
No, I agree.
So how do you do it?
I don't know. But I don't think the military continuing helps. I mean, how do you win militarily? I don't know how that works.
Would you said that in World War II?
What do you mean?
When the Nazis were trying to take over the world?
No, there was a plausible plan to win, wasn't there, when the US came in?
Just to fight them.
And there were no nuclear weapons back then, Piers, as you know.
Okay, but you just think Putin would ever use them?
Do you not think he would?
No. Why would he? He's not an Islamic fundamentalist who wants to blow himself up.
Oh, that's a very racist thing to say.
It's not.
You're saying only Muslims want to use nuclear weapons?
No, I said
What?
Islamic...
Why would Putin not want to use...
I didn't say Muslim, I said Islamic fundamentalist.
Why is it Islamic fundamentalist?
Because Islamic fundamentalists kill themselves to get what they want.
But they haven't used nukes. The only people who've used nukes in history are the United States of America.
You're missing my point deliberately, and you're playing
because I just find
you're playing the race card stupidly.
You're playing weird asides, Piers. You're bringing in Western allies.
I'm answering your question about whether I thought Russia would use nukes. No, because
the only people who would are Islamic fundamentalists.
They do not behave.
Western
He does not think like an Islamic fundamentalist where they will kill themselves to get their goals.
You know the United States of America used a nuclear weapon, Piers, right? They're not Islamic fundamentalists.
You're missing my point. The point is Islamic fundamentalists will kill themselves in the process of destroying others. Russia does not want to do that. Vladimir Putin doesn't want to kill himself.
Fair point.
Right? So my point about the nuclear threats, which he does all the time, is he takes what should be a deterrent. Look, we shouldn't have nuclear weapons, right? Period. But we do. Russia has 6,000.
As does Israel.
Russia has 6. I'm sure they do. And I put that question to Netanyahu, and he fudged it. But I'm sure, of course, they do. Right? But the point is, I don't think that the mindset of someone like Vladimir Putin is to start a war where he gets instantly vaporized.
No one brought this up, though, True. Remember when the Ukraine conflict war started up, they were talking about how sick Putin is? Remember that conversation? So what if the last thing...
fell down the stairs?
what if the last thing he does before cancer takes him the next day is to fire off a bunch of nukes?
Yeah, or what happens when the next rung of politicians down, next rung of leaders down? What happens if his generals get sick of getting gulagged for failures in Ukraine and decide to do a coup?
Yeah.
What does a dictator do when he's staring down the barrel of a firing squad or being hung from a lamppost?
Yeah.
If he's got someone that's willing to turn the key for him, that's the thing. Like, that's the fear. The fear is that someone with that power is going to do something that is not reasonable.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to address Piers' comments, his repeated comments about Israel being a liberal democracy.
Yeah, go.
Because they have an election. The most recent election that put Netanyahu into power, his greatest rival was assassinated under mysterious circumstances. Does that sound like a liberal democracy?
And also, like, I correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't North Korea have an election, and it's like 99.99%? Then and if
they have democratic in the name.
Yeah, and if it's just about having an election, then why do they always talk about Hamas being dictators? There was an election there. Yeah, it was 2008, but they had an election. So why is that not a liberal democracy?
If you want to talk about Israel being a liberal democracy, does everybody that live in Israel have the ability to vote? No, because they're an apartheid state.
Yeah.
There's different voting privileges. Is Israel staying within Israel? Within their internationally agreed borders? No, and they never have. They are constantly nibbling away at the West Bank. They're constantly stealing Palestinian homes and land and building armed kibbutzes, armed and walled villages, and saying this is Israel now. And the stated objectives in Gaza, they're going, oh, yeah, we're going after Hamas. Well, at the same time, they talk about real estate deals. That's probably the only reason that they haven't used the nukes that they don't have. Is that it's bad for real estate values.
Yeah. They don't want the turf to be poisoned for the next 1,000 years.
We're coming up on a year since
October,
this happened
Yeah.
this week. And we have found that no matter what the world's history, and however many times we sit there and go, this horrible thing, we will learn from this and never again. We'll never have a Rwanda. We'll never have a Balkan conflict. We'll never have the horrors of the Holocaust again. Cambodia. We'll never have that again. We're having it live in Technicolor, in TikTok, on all our social medias. We're seeing again and again and again. And all that keeps happening is Israel keeps on getting aid from America to buy more bombs. The question of how this conflict ends, it's when the US decides to stop giving them bombs.
Yeah.
They can't make them themselves to the degree that they're using them, and that stops it. Netanyahu stood up at the UN this weekend and railed against the UN for being this anti-Semitic organization that's always headed out for Israel. The UN's part of the reason that Israel exists. Netanyahu ordered a strike on a neighboring country that had nothing to do with October 7th from the United Nations, an organization that was set up to stop war. Who is the bad guy here?
Hey, again, there might be quite a good place to pause because I don't know. We'll see what happens with the time. I might try and play 2 more clips, and I have to apologise. I'm not entirely sure because I just wrote like a headline. I should have been more detailed on my script, but this one is called the root cause of the violence. So this is about a 90-second chat between the two of them when they're debating the root cause of the violence. Let's have a look.
It is undeniable that the root cause of the violence is Israel, Israel's occupation, the genocide in Gaza. What did the leader of Hezbollah say? He said, we won't fire any rockets if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the president of Iran say? We won't retaliate for what you did to Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the Houthis say? We'll stop blocking ships if you end the killing in Gaza. Where do all roads lead back to?
Why would you believe any of those people?
I don't believe any of them. I'm Ronald Reagan.
You're citing them as if there's sort of gospel statements from people.
Say that again, Chewie. We didn't hear you.
Why would you believe Israel?
Yeah, the exact point.
Like he says, we can't believe Hamas.
Well,
at every stage, Israel has lied to us, the international community.
And the point he's just about to make is, well, so don't believe them, test them. See what happens. Test them. And if they're wrong, continue on.
Any of them. I'm Ronald Reagan.
You're citing them as if there's sort of gospel statements from people who have unimpeachable.
I'll tell you why, if you let me finish. I'm Ronald Reagan.
A bunch of terrorists said, we won't do X, Y, Z if you do this.
I'm Ronald Reagan. I say verify. Call their bluff. If they're lying, call their bluff. Stop the Gaza fighting and then see what happens.
Yeah, but Israel has called Hamas's bluff.
When?
There was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is.
This is part of the bit I've been talking about where he's no longer a journalist. And Mehdi Hasan, I've never seen anyone, no notes, no nothing, knows it all, points it out, and embarrasses people with talking points.
There was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
It's fundamentally false. They were attacking Palestinians the week before October the 7th.
There was...
In September, you can Google it on that tablet. What's your definition of a ceasefire?
Well,
Israel gets to attack people and not the other way around.
Okay.
In September, hold on. In September, you just made a charge that's not true. There's a tablet there. You can Google it. Guardian headline right there. You can go see the news report.
I don't Google during interviews.
Well, afterwards, everyone can. There's a Guardian headline, September 2023, a month before October the 7th. The headline is Palestinians shot in the ankles by Israel in Gaza, attacked. There were airstrikes in Gaza. And by the way, Gaza is not isolated. Gaza and the West Bank under international law are one entity. There were several hundred Palestinians killed in the West Bank before October.
But my point to you, Medhi, is...
So there was no ceasefire. You just can't say... It's just not true.
They would say there was a ceasefire.
And it's not true.
So here's one of them. Like I say, it's like everyone should go and watch this. I'm going to play another one because it's worth seeing. You can see it's worth seeing. This one is talking about October the 7th and using it as an excuse. That's the heading that I've given this clip. It's a bit longer. It's 2-3 minutes. Let's have a look.
You know, October 7th was used, as you and I have discussed before, as the excuse for killing tens of thousands of Palestinians.
Well, I would categorise it differently. I don't think they used it as an excuse to go and kill tens of thousands of Palestinians. They responded to one of the most egregious terror attacks of modern times.
But when does the response end? Nearly a year.
Well, that's the question. That is the question.
Well, that's when it becomes an excuse. When you carry on killing and killing.
Is it an excuse, or is it that they are wedded to the elimination of Hamas because Hamas has persistently said, we want to keep doing the same thing over and over again? And there's a correlation with Hezbollah, whose charter is very explicit. They stand for the eradication of Israel. I mean, that's what they're about.
That doesn't justify killing 500 people in a single day, does it?
I didn't say it did, but
that's what bothers me. That's what happened this week. That's the big story. Hezbollah's charter is irrelevant to what we're talking about. That's not why they killed 500 people on Monday, Piers. Hezbollah's charter's been around for years.
I don't think it's irrelevant that you have a terror group on your doorstep who are wedded to your extinction. Why is that irrelevant?
I think the language you use is loaded, Piers. You say on your doorstep. Do you know they did a poll of Americans a while back who thought that Palestinians were occupying Israel? When we talk about this stuff, we make it sound like Israel is the one being occupied, besieged. Israel's the one that's occupying the West Bank, Gaza, longest military occupation in the world, going back to 1967. Israel is the country that occupied southern Lebanon. I mean, everything in the world did not begin on October the 7th. 1978, Israel invades southern Lebanon. 1982, Israel invades southern Lebanon. Sabra and Shatila massacre. 2006, Second Lebanon War, murder 100 people.
This is one of those moments where you think someone's brought a sword to a gunfight. This is just that moment.
Sabra and Shatila massacre. 2006, Second Lebanon War, murder 100 people.
But you always make it sound like they're just doing this for the sake of it. They're not.
What are they doing it for?
Well, they've been provoked by Hezbollah.
Hezbollah didn't exist in 1978, Piers.
OK, I'm talking about the specifics of going on now. The provocation since October the 7th. Hezbollah's first.
We're just starting. Like if we'd played that Simpsons thing right now that stop hitting me, he's already dead. I don't know what you do this next part, because it's like he's already buried in the ground in his coffin and you're still hitting him from. I don't know how you do it, but that's what he does.
Response to October the 7th was to unleash rockets on Israel.
That's not true.
On October the 8th.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is what happened.
Where did they fire the first rocket?
They fired rockets on the 8th.
Where?
Well, you tell me.
No, you just said they fired Israel.
That is the classic answer from an interviewer. I might have used it once or twice myself, when they don't have a clue what they're talking about and they realise they've just been caught.
That's not true.
On October the 8th.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is what happened.
Where did they fire the first rocket?
They fired rockets on the 8th.
Where?
Well, you tell me.
No, you just said they fired at Israel. Where?
Well, they fired in the direction of Israel.
Where did they hit? They fired at the Sheba Farms.
Answer, tell me.
I do. They fired at the Sheba Farms, which, as I said earlier, is an area of Syria. Well, the Lebanese claim it's Lebanon. Syria claims it's Lebanon. Israel says no and is occupying the Sheba Farms. They fired at Israeli.
So into Syria at a military base.
Military installations in the Sheba Farms. Now, have they got fired in Israel?
So they were firing at
Israel.
They were firing at an area that Israel says is theirs.
So goalpost shift. Get that straight away.
Israel.
So they were firing at Israel. They were firing at an area that Israel says is theirs.
No, Israel doesn't say that. Israel says it's Syria's. Because remember, Piers, Israel is occupying Syria and the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon, would argue, parts of Lebanon. This is the problem, right? The core of the problem is Israel's territorial expansionism.
It's a mess.
Attacks, not a mess. It's Israel occupying multiple Arab lands, which leads to quote-unquote resistance or quote-unquote terrorism, whichever word. I don't care what word you want to use right now. But that is the core, right? You had John Mearsheimer on the show this week, made the same point. Deal with the occupation, then you deal with the violence. And look, has Hezbollah fired into Israel at civilian attack? Yes, I don't agree with that. But the reality is 82% of the exchange of fire between Lebanon and Israel since October the 7th has been done by Israel.
Okay.
82%.
That's really important to hear. Remember when you hear people say Israel has the right to defend themselves. So what it means is basically for every time I punch you twice, you're going to punch me back 8 times. Defense. Right to defend itself. Every time I fire twice, you fire 8 times.
Israel at civilian attack. Yes, I don't agree with that. But the reality is 82% of the exchange of fire between Lebanon and Israel since October the 7th has been done by Israel.
Okay.
82%.
But
is that not a provocation of
Let
Hezbollah?
me finish my point, which is that since October the 8th, 19,000 missiles, rockets have come from Hezbollah to Israel, right?
But way more from Israel into Lebanon.
Pat,
I'm sure 82%.
What was that number?
19,
what was that number? That 19,000.
Yep, the Piers said 19,000 from Hezbollah.
19,000 rockets.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to mention something that the Israelis are quite proud of, rightly quite proud of. It's a very impressive system. They have something called Iron Dome.
Yeah.
That shoots down ballistic rockets. It has a 90% success rate. So when you're talking about that whole, like, you punch me once, I punch you 8 times.
Yeah.
Out of every attempt to punch me, I block 90% of those shots, and then I punch you 8 times.
So actually, that 20,000, so that works out for numbers quite well, 90,000. That means they fire back about 80,000. But that means of that 20,000, 2,000 get through, and you still send 80,000. So 2,000 rockets come from Lebanon into into Israel, and then 80,000 go from Israel back into Lebanon. That's the difference.
And what you're punching back with, they have absolutely no defense for.
Yeah, true.
There is no anti-aircraft in Gaza. You're punching with absolute impunity.
All right. This has got about 15 seconds. We'll just get to the end of it in case we've got a bit of gold we need to hear.
October the 8th, 19,000 missiles, rockets have come from Hezbollah to Israel, right?
But way more from Israel into Lebanon.
Well, I'm sure
82%.
Of course they've responded. What else are they supposed to do?
82%.
But
this is not two equal sides.
So they can't defend themselves.
But the vast majority of attacks is on Lebanon.
Okay, but would you...
There you go. That was that one. Look, where our time is stretching, there is one more that I could play because he does do a very good, it's only 2 minutes as well, catch-all of Morgan's journalism when he challenges him on some of the numbers he's saying. What do you reckon? Should we do another 2 minutes or should we wrap?
Oh, I'm torn.
All right,
We have run very long.
We'll do another 2 minutes then. I think it's important here once again just to show you how he is no longer, and then we'll just get out straight away. He is no longer a journalist, and the example given when, and we like doing this, like we like drilling down into the data. What happens here is you hear Piers Morgan just regurgitating data given to him, talking points basically.
Where 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were targeted specifically.
How do you know that?
What do you mean? How do I know that?
You just said 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were targeted.
How many was it?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Made the claim. How
That is what's been reported.
By
Do you
who?
dispute that?
Yeah, I dispute everything Israel says.
you
They
don't know
lied
the
for a
real
year,
number.
Piers.
You don't know the real number.
But I didn't give a number. You did.
Well, what has been the number from the other side?
I didn't give a number. You said 3,000 terrorists. I'm wondering why a
That
journalist
is what's been reported.
No, it's not reported. It's what's said by Israel. Or it says what's said by people speaking on behalf of Israel.
So
was a little girl who died?
Hang on. Israel hasn't even said it, did it?
They have in private. It's been reported widely.
To you?
No, to the American government.
Okay, but don't say they said it publicly. They haven't.
But
obviously, I believe they did it, right? But they
I believe they did it
but
too.
You're saying they said this in public.
You just gave a 3,000 number, and I'm wondering. I just saw a little girl's funeral last week. Was she a Hezbollah terrorist in your view?
No.
So then why did you say 3,000 terrorists? There was a kid killed.
No, I was about to say that in the process of targeting very specifically in an extraordinarily whichever way
in
you
a terror attack.
Well, that's what I'm going to come to. So they target 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists with their pagers, walkie-talkies, and so on. In the process, a small comparative to that
war crime, by the way,
a small number of civilians get killed, which is obviously deplorable. But my point to you is, if someone's been chucking rockets over for a year at you and your people, you've had to displace 60,000 people from the north.
The thing that he's so oblivious to, this sounds like he's describing Gaza and what Israel's doing, but what he's trying to do is describe Israel and what Hezbollah is doing. But if you listen to the words, it sounds like he is describing Gaza and Israel being the attackers.
Yeah. At you and your people. You've had to displace 60,000 people from the north of your country because of his relentless bombardment.
From Israel.
And you eventually respond in such a precise, targeted fashion.
Okay.
Right? And in the process, some civilians are killed, which is never acceptable, can never be condoned, never be supported. But if it is right, as has been widely reported by all mainstream media, that 3,000 terrorists
people associated with Hezbollah. Not everybody in Hezbollah is a terrorist.
Okay. But okay.
Like a driver, a nurse.
3,000 members of Hezbollah were targeted, right?
Yeah, that's about it. So the point that he was making was when you just repeat the talking points, and look, everyone's been a victim of, I've probably done that from time to time, but we do like to go, even when you put up that photo before, Chewy, of the Atlas meeting, I'm like, I'd like to check to make sure that is what that actually is. Where's that come from? We should double check because we will always try our hardest not to just to put out their talking points. But there you go, Chewy, look. We pretty much got through all the clips. It's gone longer. People have stayed, so they wanted to see it. Go and watch the whole thing. I've seen people saying they can't watch the whole thing. But there you go. Oh gosh, is this good or bad? Piers Morgan is the Sean Plunkett of the UK. who does that insult more? I'm not entirely sure. That probably insults Piers Morgan more, to be honest.
The only way that Piers Morgan's arguments even come close to working is that October 7th was a starting point. And it is not. And I have said this so many times. If you want to understand what is happening now, you need to have a look at what's happened before. You need to see the pattern of behavior in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel, Israel's relations with Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Egypt, the whole thing. Like we have such a conflicted attitude globally towards Israel because of the Holocaust, because Israel for a long time was a Western bastion against a Middle Eastern area that was heavily allied with the Soviet Union. It is drummed into us generationally that we need to stand for Israel as this bastion, as Piers said, of liberal democracy, and because we let the Jews get murdered wholesale in the 40s. Now, there are so many Jews worldwide that are standing up and going, the reason that we stand against what Israel is doing here is because of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
They are doing the torture, the putting people in camps, the indiscriminate punishment murders that the Nazis did. The fact that Netanyahu and his regime want you to equate the Israeli state to all Jews. And so if you criticize the Israeli state's action, then you are anti-Jew, you are anti-Semitic. And they know that reaction that has with anybody that feels guilty about what happens during World War II. Now, I think it's pretty clear that this whole conflict and this wholesale murder and these terrorist attacks on both sides can be stopped tomorrow if America cancelled all of their aid and parked a carrier battle group in the Mediterranean and enforced a no-fly zone and intercepted anything that took off. Any rocket from Hezbollah or Hamas or whatever is left, anything that launches from an airfield in Israel, we could stop this tomorrow. But nobody has the stones to do it because we're not in a Tom Clancy book and these big things just don't happen.
And look, I just think that the idea, the thing that Medhi did so well in there, he didn't justify any kind of illegal action from Hamas or any other group.
No.
So what he was saying was, what do you expect a group of people to do who are being oppressed? Do you expect them to push back legally or illegally? Do you expect them to sit there and take it? Like, what are our expectations here? What is the realistic response here? Not to support it, not to say it's good, none of those things, but let's be real. What's going to happen if you keep donking the kid in the face? Eventually, the kid's going to punch you back. You know, that's human nature. That's what's going to happen. And I just love that this line is made. And Piers Morgan looked like such a fucking idiot. Yes, I'm one-eyed when it comes to Russia, as am I, says Medhi. And then Israel? No. It's like occupier, oppressed, bombing hospitals, definitely against that. Yeah, no, that's a bit grayer. Yeah, it's just not. It's not Chewy. It's not Chewy if what you're worried about is the people who are suffering the bombings. It is if what you're worried about is the geopolitical bullshit that goes on around it. That's when it's not.
Israel's turned themselves into pariah state and they've destabilized that entire region. And I think, look, I'm someone that's always followed like war history and geopolitics stuff, and I've looked a lot at is the Israeli wars of the Cold War, you know, the 6-Day Wars and the Yom Kippur War and all of that sort of thing. And it's certainly one thing that I've noticed as this discussion about Gaza and Palestine goes on, is that those narratives and those events were always told from a Western Israeli point of view. And the more that I go back and revisit them, I'm like, okay, I kind of see where this is coming from. I want you, chat, if you haven't read about this, I suggest you do the wee Googles. This is your homework. Google the USS Liberty incident. Happened in 1967. But the pattern of behavior from the Israeli state is the same. The cliff note to this is they attacked a US Navy ship and killed or wounded 174 US sailors. They said it was an accident. My bad. But it's a hell of a read.
We will be having a test as well, by the way, on that. Chewy will be delivering that at the end of the week, so everyone should do their homework. Thank you, Sheree, for a very generous super sticker. I've just jumped onto the actual YouTube channel, and I can't scroll
I knew
back
you were going to
so
do
far.
that because you've got to know what it is.
Yeah, but I can't scroll back any further than about a couple of minutes ago. But thank you, it's very generous. Also, Bill, another very generous $20. Thank you for that. Late fee. I've been binge watching Nate Hagen's The Great Simplification podcast. Thank you for your super chat. Peter Sim on the $5 super chat. Pat's looking for the sweet engagement numbers from a Piers Morgan reaction clip. Yeah, our biggest one's ever been has been that. I think that we're pretty late to the party on this one though, so this one might do it. Says the short one, Free Palestine. Simple, to the point. Nice. And Gara, thank you for the super chat. Just checking, am I now considered to be associated with the organisation known as BHN? Yes, and we've got patches coming out that the police are going to make you take off.
And worryingly, pages.
Yeah. All right, guys, we've gone way long tonight. There's just too much stuff going on, so we're just going to wrap up super quick and say thanks everyone for tonight. It's been a bit of a blast. Guys, thanks for being with us tonight. I appreciate it. It was a long one. Thanks for sticking in there, and we'll catch you tomorrow night again for a big old episode of Big Hairy News. That's it for me, Chewy.
I was going to play the video as a palate cleanser, but we've run out of time now. Go and watch the world's largest haka win. That's very uplifting. Have a good night, guys.
Have a look at that tomorrow. All right, team. Catch you tomorrow. Be safe, everyone. See you at 9 o'clock tomorrow night for another live edition. I'm sorry Nala's not here. I'm already getting bad vibes for it. Tomorrow night. Come back for Nala tomorrow night. Hooroo, team. See ya.
Cheers, man.